Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 61st Thessaloniki International Film Festival and our very first meeting of the Directors' Corner meetings. This is a brand new initiative of the Thessaloniki International Film Festival. It's a collaboration between the international program sections, the Greek film sections, and the Agora. The Agora is the industry part of the Thessaloniki International Film Festival. I'll tell you a couple of words about it. It's an industry event that promotes European cinema and supports the local industry. And it comprises the Crossroads Co-Production Forum, the Works in Progress, the film market, as well as various other events, workshops, and activities. Without further ado, let me introduce today's brilliant filmmakers whom we are very happy to have together here. So I'll just start by the first person I see. We have Márkos Παπαδόπουλος, Άζρα Ντενίζ Οκιάι. Did I pronounce it correctly? Alίμ Khan, Bόγκνταν Τζόρτζε Απέρτι, and Fωκίωνας Μπόγρης. It's so lovely to have you guys here. It would have been amazing if we were on Thessaloniki, but this is also amazing for me too. I would like to welcome you to introduce yourselves in your own words and perhaps say a couple of things about your films, the film with which you're part of the Thessaloniki program. And I'd just like to note that we are here basically for you to talk amongst yourselves. So if someone says something that's of interest to you or you'd like to know more, just, I would have said grab the mic, but just say you want to speak and just create a dialogue amongst yourselves. And if we have time, we'll just catch some questions from the audience as well who's watching on YouTube. So Marco, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, why not? My name is Márkos Papadopoulos. I'm from Germany. I'm also half Greek. I studied in Greece in Thessaloniki for a while at the film school. And I'm the director and screenwriter of Σαρμάκο, μια ιστορία του Βορρά, a story of the North, a tale of the North, which is a film I made I finished it this year, but I made it about 1.5 years ago in Thessaloniki, about Thessaloniki, with a lot of students from the film faculty in Thessaloniki, but also with a lot of professionals and also local actors from Thessaloniki. I got to know when I was the first time in Thessaloniki. And it's a film about the Civil War and about 1949, also about the May in 1936. And especially it's a film about the music genre of rebetiko. So it's basically a film for music lovers and people who are interested in the Greek history. Of course, there are several difficulties we were confronted with during the production, but still, I'm very glad to see my film on the festival. I also saw your films, which are very great, and I'm happy to be here. And hope you also enjoyed the film at least somehow. Well, it depends, of course, what your interests are, but I think there is something in it for everyone. Yeah.
Thank you, Marco. Ázra, you want to go next?
Yeah, okay. So my name is Ázra Ντενίζ Οκιάι. I just, by the way, shot the film 1 year ago. It was the 10th of November that I began, and I shoot it in 17 days. It's a movie with crossing 4 stories, and kind of I try to write it like a domino effect, how one's life can interrupt the other one, with a kind of a fifth character is the city, who's kind of eating them, and how it can collapse, or how this mathematics can work, not in a classical way, non-narrative really. I'm coming from video art, so I use kind of my tools for writing and telling the story. And so I finished in September, beginning of September, and I'm here.
Great to have you here. Alím, you wanna take the turn?
Hi. Yep, my name's Alím Khan. I'm from the UK, and my film is After Love. It's a drama that's set in Dover, in the southeast of England, and in Calais. And it's a film about a woman who, it's a film about an older woman who's about 60 years old. She's a white Muslim convert, and her husband dies. Her Muslim husband dies very suddenly. And after he dies, she discovers that he has a very big secret in Calais. He has another family across the channel. And she goes over there to understand this deceit. And in doing so, it forces her to question every part of herself, every part of her kind of identity, the choices that she made for this man. And really, it's a film about grief. It's a film about identity, and also it's a film about family and how we construct our families, the different ways families are kind of, I guess, constructed and put together. So it's a very personal story. It's not autobiographic, but it's very much inspired by my mum, who is, a white Muslim convert. And so it's the lead character of Mary is very much, was very much based on my mum. And yeah, I'm very pleased to be playing in your festival, and I'm very grateful that we can even have this moment together. So thank you very much.
Thank you to Alím. Bogdan, you want to go next?
Yes. First, it's a pleasure to really meet all of you. Maybe we're going to meet next year or 2 years from now or 3 years from now in Thessaloniki. I also have big memories of Thessaloniki. It was one of my first trips after communism collapsed from Romania. So I remember I was in high school, so we took a bus to Athens and we stopped in Thessaloniki. I always remember I bought my first real sneakers, like good sneakers from Thessaloniki. Then I went with the first film. I went back to Thessaloniki, and it was an incredible experience. About a few words about me. I'm from Romania originally, but I've been living in New York for 19 years. I still feel 100% Romanian. And it's weird because it goes back to the films that I'm making right now. So I'm doing a trilogy of 3 stories set in my small town in Romania. So basically, I took off time from teaching here and went back to Romania and identified. It's the first film in that trilogy. The second one is shot already. So hopefully next year, maybe we can show Thessaloniki. If it's equally good, I hope so. Also, I've watched everybody's movie. I was really impressed, except Fωκίωνα. I'm just watched 1/3 of your movie, but I'm going to finish it at the end. But it's so amazing to me, sitting here and somebody from Germany, somebody from the UK, just so international. I mean, this is exactly what, not now in terms of COVID, but this is exactly what the festival is. You see like different points of view and different, and one minute I see something in Turkey, next minute I see like the white cliffs of Dover, and it's just, it's been 2 good days watching movies from around the world. I'll shut up now. Let Fωκίωνα take over.
Thank you, Bogdan. Fωκίωνα?
Okay, so first of all, it's the first time in many years that we can't be at Thessaloniki, and we are forced to attend this way. I'd really love to be there this year as well. Last 10 years have been amazing at Thessaloniki Film Festival, and well, my film is titled Immersement, Πρόστιμο, and it's the real life story of a cannabis dealer. What else Elena, would you like to know?
Would you like to say a couple of more words about the character and what drives him to do the stuff that he does? Because there's something that takes place that drives the act.
I can talk to you about the real life character, the guy who I came across in 2013. He was the cousin of my close friend, and I listened to his real life stories. So I thought they were interesting, amazing, funny, and at that moment, you know, I was just looking for an idea to start writing a screenplay. It was just, you know, the right timing. It took us 7 years up to this point, and here we are discussing with you guys online.
That's so true.
It feels good to be doing even that.
That's the best part. After 2-3 years of making a movie, the best part is talking online about it.
And you know,
also.
you can geek out as much as you want. Feel free. I mean, although your films are very different to each other in a sense, we can connect them in different ways. I don't know if you would like me to start by saying a few things, or if you'd like to ask someone something. How would you like to?
Maybe you could start with something to
Right,
break the ice.
Okay. So, although we have 5 very different films, not only in content, but in style and approach, I think that there is a common thread to all of the projects. And I found the theme of letting go to be kind of an interesting connection, because all of your characters, your protagonists, in a sense, have to go through their journey, but they have to let go of the past or some kind of memories or some parts of themselves that they're not feeling good about, or clashes with society that restrict them from moving forward. And this is the first step that leads them, you know, ahead. And I was wondering how and if, because that's my interpretation of things, this process of letting go was indeed part of how you envisioned your characters and the journey they do in the film. So, does anyone want to go first?
I'll go first. I think one of the things that I really wanted to explore in the film was this idea of identity and how we construct. I guess one of the questions that the film is exploring, that I wanted to explore in writing the film, was how we construct our identities, but also, more importantly, who we construct our identities for. And I think when I think about my mum and I think about my family growing up, you know, my family are Muslim, my mum is white, my dad is Pakistani. I grew up in this kind of environment where I never really felt like I was really one or the other. And even within my own family, it always felt like a bit of an alien. And so there's this thing, you know, this idea of code switching, how we play different versions of ourselves, the different facets of ourselves, and who we show our versions of ourselves to. So I was really interested in this idea. And I mean, I spent about 6 years writing the screenplay, and it was like, not like a therapy, but it was like a real, I think it took so long to write because I was exploring subconscious deep questions and traumas in my own life in a way. And it was kind of the film was the kind of the expression of trying to work those questions out. I mean, I don't know if this is even not really answering your question, but I guess from Mary's point of view, the lead in this film, as she kind of goes through, it's very much about how about having the bigger picture and how truth is key to that. And I guess by the end of the film, I mean, I'm not going to give the whole film away, but I guess by the end of the film, she's in a position where it's not perfect. Her life isn't perfect. Her life is changed forever, but she has a bigger sense of the full picture. She has all of the information now to be able to move forward. And so the way that I approached the filmmaking was really about starting really close in the detail, so much that you're so close that you can't really distinguish what is right, what is wrong. You know, you're so close. And obviously I'm using the cliff as the kind of the symbol for this. And then by the end, you see the image, you see the full picture for what it is. So I don't even know if that answered your question, but I guess the question was about how, that was my kind of take on how I found my into the project.
And I think Mary does.
I just want to add up to what Alím said about the last picture, that I felt exactly that. What was interesting to me was your whole movie, you have closer shots, and that you feel like a sort of a visual noise, right? That matches where the character is. And at the end, that shot, then you pull back, is so symmetrical and so balanced. And I think they are in the middle of the shot that you feel, again, it's something specific. Then maybe that interpretation, that shot can flower in 5 or 6 different interpretations. Maybe Alím doesn't even have control about. But you clearly feel that contrast between the barrage of shots, and it's close, and then the last one, which is very symmetrical and calm, I would say, right? So it was very interesting to me.
And in a sense, I felt that Mary, she has created this identity you're talking about, and she has created her identity for her husband for so many years. And now she's called upon to let go of such a, an integral part of herself to move forward, at the same time retaining it. It's not about forgetting her husband, but it's, you have to create space for what's next, which is her relationship with her husband's son, or even Geneviève. But I felt there is this very interesting relationship of parts that have to be left behind for other parts to come and fill in the space.
It's interesting about this idea of leaving things behind, because I don't see it this way personally. I think it's not about leaving things behind. It's about bringing everything with you, but it's about rethinking about, I don't think this character can leave anything behind. I think her husband's death, the child that she had, these are, grief is not something that you leave. It's something that you carry with you throughout your life. But I just think that you relearn how to coexist with that. And I think that's really where I wanted this character to end up, in a space where it's a very bittersweet, it's life. It's a paradox, actually, because you just find a way to kind of move forward whilst carrying everything on your back. I think so it wasn't really about leaving things. And the question of her religion, I mean, this is not a film about her religion. I mean, it's a facet of her, it's an important part of her, but it was very important for me for her to remain a Muslim. And it's, although her initial choice may have been to convert for her husband, this is a conviction that she also holds. I mean, she is a practicing Muslim. She's more practicing than her actual husband. And I wanted her to remain that way. It's a part of her identity. But I think when she's gone through the whole story, by the end, her conviction and her faith is perhaps more clear. It's perhaps more, she has more agency in her own story, and therefore she is, her faith is kind of clearer in a sense, because she continues with it on her own terms.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Would anyone like to take cue?
Yeah, I can.
Great.
I decided to write these stories because every morning I'm waking up with a big chaotic news in Turkey. And my past, I completely forgetting my past of one day before even, because it's really big shock. And it was about how handling this big shock of chaos and putting a rhythm on that for one day, because the film is in 24 hours, and jumping in darkness because there is a big power cut. And it's helped me to bring a kind of a getting out the light, so how the character is gonna move and disappear on the screen. And yeah, it was about making a chapters on this chaos and how we can go for our future and but just handling and letting go the situation and just moving on this chaos and what they are bringing or not. I mean, just showing like I'm calling it like a war photographer. You need many pictures for understanding a war, of a civil war or a war. I mean, I really see that like that.
Can you repeat? You see it as a war of?
War photographer, you know?
War photographer, yes.
Yeah, like pictures. Yeah. And yeah, it was just about forgetting our past, and going on what we are living in.
Yeah, because your characters as well are seeking their identity through that chaos, within that chaos.
Yeah,
you mentioned.
Yeah, they are, because I'm a woman, of course, I shot women because I know them very well, but I think that moving woman's character, they are more different than the male's character, and showing how they are handling, because it's also universal, by the way. It's not just about a Turkish woman or a woman from Turkey. You get something and you have to continue to your life like nothing else past 5 minutes before, even you are being harassed or something, and you have to do something at the end of the day, and just surviving on the mood. And on the same time, bringing your lights and colors. I mean, it was interesting for me like that, like having like a cool way, like a cat. I mean, I don't know, just showing and disappearing, doing your stuff. Becoming a drug dealer. I have also a woman who's a drug dealer. She needs to change her face for using a way to earn money. Yeah, it was a chaos like that, what I orchestrate.
Talking about chaos, I think Bogdan, your character, goes through a lot of that. Would you like to comment a bit?
Maybe before listening to Ázra and Alím, and also to your overall theme of letting go, I just realized, of course, I not just realized, and without becoming too philosophical, that in the end, making a movie and finishing it is letting go. And I'm sure we all have that experience where you put maybe ideas and emotions in the movie, but once you finish it and people see it, they sometimes think totally different things about it. For example, Elena, you said it's about leaving things behind, and Alím immediately said, no, I think it's carrying them forward. To me, that doesn't even mean that Alim's version necessarily is the valid one, right, Alím? Or Elena is not the valid one. It's that is letting go. You make a movie, and then it always happens like this, right? Oh, I love that scene, and I think it said that. And then you realize, oh my God, that scene, I had only 1 hour to shoot it that way. So that's why I did one shot instead of 2 or 3. I'm exaggerating, I'm joking, but I don't know if Alím, you want to add a little bit, but
no, I think the way that you just articulated that is really wise, and I think that's very true. You make a film, you have ideas on something, and then you release it into the world, and that's actually part of the joy of making a film, is that you started. you're expressing something, and sometimes actually it's almost like when you're making the film, I think there's some that obviously you have an idea on what you're doing, but it isn't really until you're actually having a discussion on it that sometimes certain things become more clear to you about what you were actually doing in the first place. Does that make sense? Like sometimes things are quite subconscious and you haven't quite worked them all out, and it's only really through having a dialogue that you that those things crystallize for you. So no, it's Elena's interpretation of that is certainly not wrong. It's her interpretation, and that's valid as much as anything. So,
in fact, I think Alím pinpointed to me what's good about good quality filmmaking, which is if you have your idea you make a movie in your head, I don't think the movie will necessarily be good, but it's being on set and being open to the world and inviting the world in a way that changes everything, even in the last minute, or changing everything that particular morning. So, but that's maybe too philosophical. But back to my movie, yes, I think the chaos is actually built in the narrative itself. Again, like Ázra, for example, I have a very limited time frame. I have 2.5 days or something like that. I put only the hours. I have chapters in the movie, so I only put the hours because I didn't want to be very specific about exactly. But you can build it back up if you're interested and see that exactly when the movie starts and finishes. But that chaos, yeah, it's the heart of the movie, the heart of the character, and I chose a very subjective approach. So really, the main character is in every scene. So it's in every scene. We only see him and what he sees. So you are going with him all the time. And I think since chaos is so much part of his premise, in a way, of the character's premise or situation, then it becomes part of your experience as well. So
in my movie, I get really big chaos on the city, but the day I shot one of the last scene, they think that it was in a ghetto, and they think there is a riot, and suddenly there were 6 tanks of police who arrived with 30 Kalashnikov pointing to my team. And I really learned to be calm on the chaos and handling. It was really crazy. I think maybe it's also the new generation. We are learning how to shoot in a chaos. Mine was extreme, but I think everybody had to be more elastic and bringing that on the camera, what you're shooting around what you are living before. Yeah.
And speaking of chaos and leaving things behind or not, Marco, you had a lot to deal with. I mean, with the reconstruction and the theme of the Civil War and the conflict, and your protagonist real, what's the word? Struggle with the past. Would you like to say a few things about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that in Sarmako, everything is leading to chaos eventually. Because as you mentioned, there are 2 political periods, which is indeed political chaos. And it's of course difficult to reconstruct such a political epoch. I mean, where do you start? Where do you end? I mean, the film is anyways very distanced and restricted. So you choose carefully what to show and what not, and how to show it, also with the means of the old Greek cinema, for example. So you try to find a certain balance in this chaos you create. But whatever happens in this film, the end has to lead into violence somehow. I mean, the whole chaos culminates somehow in the end scene, and with the partisans, and with the with the killings, and with revenge. And I also realized this, especially in Unidentified and in Immersement, that there is suddenly a certain explosion of violence going on. So there are characters who are developing, and suddenly there is this kind of Tarantino-like or Taxi Driver-like explosion of violence, where you find your relief in the characters because they don't have any other way out. They have to take revenge, or they have to defend themselves somehow. And that's the raw violence you see in most of these films. I mean, it's probably something subconscious, but you automatically do it. You have to find a solution for your ending, or you have to reason why a certain character develops like he does. Probably you always find probably everything is leading to violence, especially when there's chaos inside a certain character and inside a certain narration. Yeah.
Well, I really like the way you put it, and I think you also see violence as some kind of resolution and probably a good way to end a film.
Well not necessarily yeah.
I think I'm pretty sure I have seen parts of your film, and a pretty extreme sequence comes to mind where I think there's some pretty extreme stuff going on there, like soldiers. I don't want to spoil it. Can I go on?
Well, I think you can go on, because yeah, you can still see the movie afterwards, or you have seen it, whatever. But yeah, of course you can go on. Yeah,
I still have to see the whole movie, but really I was impressed by the intensity of that scene. That was pretty extreme, and you know, the camera work too. That was like pretty rough. You know, I like that.
Thank you. Yeah.
You know, we often have the feeling that you know, in quite a few of the films we've seen lately, you know, they are like shying away from that kind of intensity that you brought to that scene. I'd like to see more of that.
You will at some point in time. Well, yeah, I definitely agree. There needs to be intensity anyways in some scenes, especially when you deal realistically with violence. I mean, violence is not a way to it's not violence doesn't exist to celebrate. I mean, of course, there are films which celebrate violence because they belong to a certain genre. But if you use violence realistically, there was always a justification for something else in the narration. So let's say violence leads to revenge, or revenge leads to violence again, or violence leads to counter-violence. And this is a very interesting motive, because it leads to certain twists. And this is something I also saw in Unidentified, where you really don't know in the beginning where everything is going, but suddenly you realize a certain plan in the mind of this cop, let's say, who really has to struggle with whole society and a lot of problems, but his only solution is the extreme, basically. He doesn't have another solution. He chooses the extremist thing I didn't really expect, but this is exactly what cinema is about, because you have a certain twist, and then you understand the character even better. Yeah, so that's very interesting, and also something I realized in Immersement. Yeah? You have these characters, and also the friend of the protagonist's sister, who is in the beginning pretty sympathetic, but suddenly he becomes more crazy than our protagonist. So everything becomes more and more fucked up as we go along with the film. So this is the development I talked about, and this is the specific thing about these narrations, where you as a viewer get surprised by these screenplay decisions, let's say. Yeah, that's it.
I want to add to that. I totally agree that there's violence and there's violence at the same time. And without giving too much from my movie, of course, I can talk the most about my movie because I know it the best. There is indeed a pretty extreme thing, let's say, towards the end of the movie. But to me, the most violent thing happens in the last 15 minutes, where there are two people talking across a table from one another. To me, that far. I would take, I mean, you know, it's bigger, something way more violent than the scene before. So But otherwise, I agree totally. And again, to me, cinema doesn't have to be just truthful, but it has to be interesting. That's why, of course, you need spikes up and down. You need interesting moments. You need to, it's crystallized life. You need to push it a little bit. Otherwise, you end up with a flat story, and it could be truthful, but it wouldn't be interesting. So, of course, it's a huge subject to tackle, but just a couple of thoughts.
We have started receiving some questions from the audience, and I will start with the first that's addressed to Alím. And it says that you have been inspired by your mother who has converted, but how did you come up with the whole story? And is it based on real facts?
How did I come up with the story? Well, I guess the locations are very inspired in the sense that my grandparents lived in the town next to Dover, and so I know this landscape very well because I spent my childhood there. And as kids, I'm from a very, very big family, and so we didn't really have much money, but we would go to Calais for our holidays because it was very cheap. And so I know the landscapes very well. And there's something about the landscapes, like the proximity between these two places. Like when it's a clear day, you can see Calais from Dover, and there was something about that idea, that image, that there's like a kind of a mirror almost that you can, that this Mary, for example, standing on the cliffs looking out, that she can see this life and she can see Calais in front of her. There was something about that visual in my head that just seemed to really mirror the characters. And that they've always been in each other's lives. They've always been shadows in each other's kind of marriage and relationship. And so I think really it was the idea of that made me kind of continue with the story in this way. I mean, it's not autobiographic. Like I don't have a step family in Calais. My dad is still alive, all this kind of stuff. But the character, I guess one of the things when I was writing was, because the character of Mary is very much inspired by my mum, I used my mum as a kind of barometer on like to imagine my mum in this scenario is so extreme, but that's how I wanted to approach this from a character point of view. I wanted to put the character in an environment that it was so extreme for them, like from a real life point of view, that's kind of what propelled the character. It's like kind of making this character go deeper and deeper and become more and more complicit in the deceit. I think this kind of question of truth and like morality and the kind of our own moral compass and on our own kind of red lines, and how we cross and break our own rules, like Genevieve says in the film, was something that kind of, I was very interested in this idea of like secrets and how we keep secrets from the closest people in our lives. And that's a real thing, you know. We're all I think we're all liars, I think. And I think the film is looking at this idea of kind of, I wanted the audience to question their own moral compass when they watch the film. I wanted them to emphasize with this character, but to put themselves in her shoes. And anyway, I'm going off and talking off now, so I'll just shut up. But anyway, I think the question was it inspired by real life? Yes and no. That would have been the quick answer.
No, that was great. Thank you. So the next question is addressed to all of you, and it reads that I'd like to ask the directors if they feel that the COVID pandemic could start a new film genre. Films not only about seclusion, but made by people in seclusion. It's an interesting one. Would anyone care to?
I think that there will be a lot of dystopic film, and this is the problem. This is the danger.
It's already a problem?
It's, of course, a big problem. And yeah, I was thinking about that. The people who's not gonna It's not filmmaker gonna begin to write about that. I know that in music, actually, in USA, there is no more guitar that they can sell. Everybody began to try to make music. So people gonna write about that. And it's really important. Archiving this is really important, I think. But as a genre, yeah, it's kind of a dystopic, but like that, maybe we're gonna explode this name dystopic. What's gonna be after this, because this is a dystopia, what we are living, kind of. And yeah.
Utopia. It's not even this anymore. Anyone else would like to add something on that?
I mean, I agree with Ázra. I think there's a danger in that. It's such a big thing that we don't want to see a flood, right, Ázra? Probably a flood of tens and tens of movies. Maybe there'll be a couple of really good movies, but then we don't. There's a danger. I'm not saying, well, everybody's free. We live in a free world, so everybody's free to make movies about anything. And of course, there will be a lot of movies, but there's a danger. Now everybody wants to talk about that and that theme and that. So I'm just saying there's a danger in it, and that's it. And some good movies will probably come out of it, which is great.
Someone else?
I don't know. Maybe people will be so fed up with this whole fucking pandemic that they'll be like, they don't want to hear about it again. So, you know, I think there's always that risk because it's such a global thing. Of course, there's going to be films are made about this, but we're all living it. Like, we're all actually living. I think this is one of the things in a very long time, you know, where the whole world has been affected by this thing, and to varying degrees, we're all sick of it. So, I mean, I certainly won't be watching a film about the pandemic. I think I'll be like, I've done that. I've lived that. I don't need to see a film about the frigging pandemic. But hey, as Bogdan says, everyone's free to kind of express, and I'm sure there will be some interesting films that explore interesting things about that. But yeah.
What's interesting is if you want to make a movie about a pandemic, I think a good filmmaker would never choose the pandemic itself as a subject for the movie. If you want to talk about seclusion or themes that are related to that, you'll be better served to choose a subject matter completely different from the pandemic, but explore those themes, those things that we are confronting now, let's say what human nature is confronting right now, but not about the pandemic. That would be probably a better choice if you want to make a movie about that. My 2 cents.
And I guess that in the same way that people during the Second World War, okay, they went to the cinemas, they started off with the newsreels, but afterwards they really didn't care about watching films about the war. They just wanted romance and comedy. You just need distractions. So maybe this ties in with what you just said, Bogdan, that if it's transferred or metabolized into something else, maybe this makes more sense than just watching reality again up in your face. You know what I'm saying. Reality is fine, but
to me, yeah, the subject matter is not necessarily related on an organic level to the theme. So if you can explore the feelings that we're all feeling right now, we're in our homes most of the time, I wouldn't choose the pandemic as the reason to be home. I choose another narrative pretext. A lot of stories are just a narrative pretext to explore other things. So choose something else about somebody stuck in a house, let's say, just for the sake of the argument, and not the COVID-19 pandemic. Because you're, instead of opening up the movie, then you're probably narrow it down to the year 2019, 2020, 2020, or 2021. Hopefully not more than 2021.
Let's hope not.
I feel the same way as Alím. I think, you know, we've had too much of this in our everyday lives lately. Our whole life has been, you know, plagued by this thing. And I'm not sure if I want to watch a movie that deals with the pandemic and especially COVID. But you know, on the other hand, maybe you can't exclude that from cinema. It's way too big to be excluded and ignored. And also I don't really like, you know, films that are about you know, like great disasters or you know, global themes. You know, I like smaller stuff, like, you know, a film that centers on a character, maybe 2 or 3 characters. But I'm not really into films that deal with, you know, huge global problems, you know.
Okay. Marco, we have a couple of questions for you. Let me just read them out. So why did you do a film about the Civil War, and why didn't you decide on it being a documentary? And whether you find any common things between the time that your movie is set in, which is 1949, and today. So it's 3 different things.
Yeah, very interesting. I can answer the first of the second question. Was it I think easily. Why I didn't do a documentary? Because I only make fictional films, and I'm not into the documentary genre. Also, I think that the Civil War and Rebetiko, and also other historical epochs, with the means of the old Greek cinema I mentioned, need to be fictional. So it has to be a fictional movie, and also I would prefer.
Is he glitching? I think he is, eh? Let's give him a couple of seconds.
There I am.
Marco.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. What was the last thing I said and you heard me?
I don't remember now. I'm sorry.
Okay, probably it was that I prefer the fictional films and not the documentary.
Yeah.
And the first question was why I chose the Civil War, because the Civil War is not. Well, a lot of Greek films have dealt with the Civil War, but in combination with Rebetiko, especially in the work of Kostas Feris, their film Rebetiko, and also in the series To Minoritis Avgis, which is also about this music genre, there is also one epoch which is not inside, and that's the Civil War. And I asked myself, why is this like it is? Could you maybe combine the Civil War with Rebetiko and other historical stuff which happened in Greece? And also the Civil War very much fits into Rebetiko, and also the aesthetics of Rebetiko, of Western films, of film noir. This is a whole combination which comes together. So I decided to do this film because it's a very interesting historical epoch that fits with this musical genre. And also because it, of course, fits to our modern society. There are problems in the film which mention some taxes, some debt, some money, which is, of course, the economic crisis we have right now. But there are also, coincidentally, some things which right now are happening. For example, also during the Civil War, because of some tax problems, the cinemas were closed. So you couldn't go to the cinema, especially on one specific day, because the cinemas were on strike. And now suddenly what the movie says is represented in our reality. Suddenly, because of another reason, our cinemas are closed. So I think there are certain connections, and also still the big wound of the Civil War in general, because as you see in Greek news especially, but all over the world, the big gap between the left and the right, and also, let's say, the heritage of the Second World War and the Civil War in general is always omnipresent in our society. So this is something I wanted to show, that every epoch influences the next epoch. And also after the Civil War, what is coming? The 50s, the 60s, the 70s, every epoch and every decade is influencing the others. till now, and there are still some very controversial things politically going on, especially in Greece, where you realize that there is something going on with the past as well. Yeah.
Yeah. The past is always there.
Indeed, indeed.
So we have a question that's addressed to all of you. It says, cinematography by its nature, it's quote unquote, is and should be a scientific tool for studying life, humanity, nature, space and time, history, biology, etc. Not to represent, but to transfer your universal consciousness. Do you agree? I can read it again if you want.
Yeah.
Cinematography by its nature is and should be a scientific tool for studying life, humanity, nature, space and time, history, biology, etc. Not to represent, but to transfer universal consciousness. Is that something that you would agree with?
I mean, such a weighty subject. I don't agree with the first part that is a scientific instrument, because let's look at photography, which is, let's say, very related to cinematography. And photograph is not just a scientific tool, of course, to represent what is the universal consciousness. Can probably talk 1 hour about that as well. I'm not sure exactly what it means, you know, but let's say I just don't agree with it's a scientific tool, and the rest then delves into philosophy, which you can talk ad infinitum. But I know that Fokíon maybe has something to say, because I saw him nodding against.
I don't agree with the scientific part either. I don't think there's something scientific about making a film. I mean, unless you are, I don't know, Michael Haneke or something. I think it's not. It has to do with humans' feelings and all that, and I don't know. It just isn't scientific to me, you know. I don't consider it scientific. I consider it human.
Okay.
I don't think the person who has the question necessarily has the term scientific going in the same direction that we think about it, because the question ends with the universal consciousness, which I don't know how scientific that is. So I don't know exactly what the question is, but
I think there is a distinction there between representing, so the role of cinema to represent all the elements that they wrote about, and transferring something, transmitting maybe. So perhaps it has to do with representing, being a mirror, or delivering a message, if I'm understanding correctly.
I don't agree, but I can mention some point that art is not copying something, basically. First philosophical question is that. But on the same time, you need to bring your tools. Like, we need some science for making the slides or stuff, so, and some mathematics sometimes for the script. And this maths have to not be learned to you. You have to find your way. So this is making you a filmmaker and bringing your tools. But you need a lot of science and sociology and philosophical terms for just watching a character and getting his words. Like, I know, this drug dealer guy, I mean, you cannot just shoot this guy. You need to pass a process about some science, sociology or something else, or history. That's why we are not copying the nature, but we are bringing our tools. I don't know. So I'm in the middle. It doesn't mean that I agree, but you need some tools, absolutely. Yeah. For me, I mean, you need to go to conservatory for a little bit playing piano. You cannot just play. You need, your muscle have to learn a little bit for playing something. And we are playing with tools.
Mm-hmm.
That's my
sure.
As one famous director said, related to this, that art is not a, I'm paraphrasing right now because I don't know exactly, but said that art is not a photograph of reality, but a photograph of a photograph of reality. So there's so much more going on than just simply, you know, using a scientific tool to even represent or to transform something else. There's a mystery there as well, right, that we cannot touch. So I think that mystery, you can call it whatever you want, even universal consciousness if you want to, but there's a mystery that even us, we don't have access to it. Maybe, again, you can go too deep and, you know, be ridiculous talking about these things for an hour or two, but we should respect that mystery, I think, that in the making of an art, right? You don't have full control over it ever.
Yeah, and maybe it kind of goes back to what we were discussing in the beginning, that no matter what you want to transfer, my consciousness and your consciousness and the other's consciousness will in the end receive it as they wish. So perhaps transferring is not the right word, let's say, but consciousness is being created so mysteriously.
I just wanted to ask, who came up with the last question? Is something somebody sent you?
It's from people watching on YouTube, so I don't have the name of the
No,
question.
I'm not asking for a specific name, of course.
No, I don't have a...
Fωκίωνας wants to track he or she down.
No, but, you know, interesting questions that can lead to interesting questions.
It's, I think, you know, sometimes viewer in this certain festival, you know, they just try to come up with, you know, really philosophical questions, you know, sometimes that are deeper than the films themselves. Don't you ever have that feeling? I mean, I often witness that kind of thing at Thessaloniki screenings. But it's funny, of course. I mean, it's great.
Sometimes it's really boring also.
Yeah, it can be.
Just for smashing you.
Yeah, there is always this kind of academic approach somehow when somebody asks you a question about the universal meaning of films and the philosophy behind the films. I mean, things are way more easy, I think, sometimes. And I also like questions more which are referring to the content, let's say, or to the style or whatever. But it's very difficult to bring it to a broader level, I think. But well, yeah, that's how it is. Sometimes these questions are also very interesting.
To me, it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning, right? That you have no control over it, and that's actually a visceral pleasure about making a movie. If you move the camera on somebody's face slowly, 10 people will see that, and 10 people will talk about that move. Even though you had one specific idea, it turns into 10 specific ideas. So to me, that's actually the pleasure of, right?
Yeah, exactly. We have a comment about your film, Ázra. It's not a question. There's someone who was very excited with your film, and they say that unraveling the story in parallel from different perspectives was very refreshing and original. Okay, and I think we have one final question. We have we had an explanation about the cinematography quote, but it's not there anymore. So I'm going to go ahead with one last question to all of you. How difficult was it to find money to make movies? The $10 million question.
It was the easiest thing of my life.
Okay, that's amazing.
No. No, I made it with a nano budget, not micro. I made terrific moments. I don't want to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just took a look at my bank account and tried to figure out how to do it, and somehow it worked out. But well, there was no money finding, and I didn't have any funding or anything, or a company behind my back. So that's anyways the case in independent filmmaking. But still, of course, it's always advisable to get some funding somehow. And of course, a bit of support always exists. But in this case, it was very, very, very difficult, especially for a historical topic. But, yeah.
I think that we are in a generation that we can combine some solutions, because in my country, there is no solution for making movies. But when I was talking with a friend, filmmaker friend of New York, they were saying, like, we are making 2 films to $100,000 every year. Like, it's not a bunch of money, but it was okay for making a little film. But they were keep going filming, and they have also Bolex camera and 16 millimeters for some reason I don't know. We cannot find here in Europe, but they were getting that, shooting, and they were making it. In France, you have to get a lot of money for making a film. Any friend of mine in France can make it in 1 year. But at the end of my last year, with my producer, I decided to making it to a nano budget, really not the way, it was 10% of the film budget that we were talking 3 years ago. And I said, let's just shoot it in a guerrilla way, and we will see. We just could make the production, and then we wait the funds for in post-production, and we were lucky to get it, 1 or 2. But I mean, sometimes you have to not just wait the money and just saying, okay, I'm gonna make a building with beton, but you have to change the tools for making it, like, just, okay, I'm gonna make with wool. I don't know, you have to absolutely change stuff, otherwise you're gonna burn yourself and your brain, because it's getting a lot of time and sadness moments, and you have to find your solutions. What I done, it was like that, because in Turkey there's no money.
You also mentioned drug dealing a while ago. Maybe that could be some kind of solution for all of us. You know? It really crossed my mind when I was trying to make this film, you know, because I thought that it's a story about a drug dealer. So maybe if I did it myself, maybe it would be, you know, I'd be true to the theme of my movie. Yeah. Well, it's illegal, of course, but it's just a thought, you know.
Interesting, yeah.
Why not?
Well, I'm just saying this because it was a nightmare to get financed. Actually, I never got financed for this film, and I was only offered some money from, you know, friends and family, and my bank account, like Marco said. It's funny, you know, nobody wanted to have anything to do with this movie for some reason.
First, I hope Fωκίων doesn't start drug dealing. I want to meet you in Thessaloniki.
I want to meet you as well, all of you, yeah. Hopefully.
But 1 minute about this. Maybe the question is from somebody young who wants to make movies and inquiring about the money. Of course, getting money is difficult. It's probably a little bit easier in Europe because you have some public support and maybe you can apply to your national funds or things like that. But if it's a first movie, I really want to say, and I agree with Ázra 100%, that I think nowadays, to be honest, it's the easiest time in history to make a movie, right? If you have a great idea and if you keep it self-contained. So my advice, if there's somebody young who asked the question, is to not wait. I agree with Ázra, not wait, because I've seen people wait 3, 4, 5 years and then you fall out of love with your idea and then you don't make the movie. So maybe come up with a self-contained small idea for the first movie, and nowadays there are 10 cameras that are theatrical quality out there. You can shoot a very good movie. You need a little small recorder to record audio, get some friends, and keep it simple. Of course, if you have big scenes or anything like this, or take advantage, shoot it in a city and take advantage of that. Again, inviting the world in it. So money is important, but it's not everything. So for the first movie, you can find a way, right? When we were younger than we are, it was so hard to shoot a movie on 35, you process film, do this, do that, or the digital cameras were not good enough to hold on the big screen. Nowadays, those problems, in my opinion, are totally gone. So money is not everything.
Yeah. So would Alím or Marco want to say anything on that? Or
we were very fortunate that we in the UK we have public money that we were able to apply for. So the British Film Institute financed the film with BBC Films. So I made short films before, obviously, and I was they saw my short films, and I was able to develop a relationship with the executives that the people that are looking for new talent. So I was developing for a long time with those partners, and then was very fortunate to get the money that we needed to make the film. So we're very fortunate in the UK, and I know this isn't the case everywhere, but we have a lot of we have public funding that really that's remit is about nurturing kind of independent voices and very distinct stories. So we were very we really benefited from this.
I also really agree with Bogdan, I have to say. Nowadays it's way more easier than back then, and I don't know because I'm too young for this to know, but back then it was way more difficult, at least, to finance a film or to shoot film. Now you can even shoot a film with cheaper cameras or even with your phone if you like. At least you can create something, which is the biggest advantage. And for me, that's my first feature film, so I didn't have any experience in the feature film business. I made some short films and video clips and little commercials, and sometimes you get paid and sometimes not. But to finance your own first film is probably probably feels like suicide, but it's the best idea you can do. You just do it, and then you see the result, and whatever happens, you're satisfied. And of course, I searched for some financing, and also had a bit of support from my university with a scholarship, or very little, or from the Greek community in Cologne, which is the partner city of Thessaloniki, because they liked the idea. And this was probably enough. It wasn't enough money, but it was enough motivation for me to continue this project. So that's definitely a lesson learned. And afterwards, you can still see for financing and big institutions that give away money. But I also think that the first thing you can do is write the screenplay and get it started somehow, whatever. And it will work out anyways if you really believe in the project, and if you put in your heart and blood and sweat and whatever you have.
So we are over time, but we have one more question. If it's okay with you, I can read it to you. Is everyone okay?
Sure.
And I think it's addressed to everyone, but I'll read it and you'll see what. Could the leader role of your film be from the opposite sex and how would that affect the scenario? Especially to Fωκίων, but it's addressed to everyone. So
for myself, for my film, I can say that I made a queer movie. Like, my characters could be a man and not gonna really get a problem with a woman. So normally it's written like that mostly. And I also get a funny argument on a conservative critics that they were saying it's even not a woman film. I don't know what does it mean. So yeah, I agree that my characters can be a man. So this is really important for the new generation to writing it, like you're feeling like your friends. I mean, not having just one character like a beton, a statue, and we cannot move. Yeah, I am completely queer or not. We don't need a name. I mean, yeah, mine can be like that, absolutely.
Fωκίωνα?
So I'm thinking about what you just said. The leading character of my movie being the opposite sex. That would be fantastic. I mean, that really sounds great. But it would, of course, it would be a different movie, and it wouldn't be. Well, it could still be a film dealing with toxic masculinity, just the way it is. If the protagonist was a girl, you know, she could be dealing with a man's world. That would be interesting. That would be great.
It would be tailored in a way.
And I really would like to. I don't know what my next movie is going to be, or I don't know if I'm going to ever make another one, but I really want to make a movie with a female leading character. I would love that. I'd love to do that.
Anyone else on that gender-related question?
Just like with the theme, I think if you start with an idea about genre, maybe it's a bad idea. You choose probably what's not just the genre of the main character, but everything what's more appropriate for the story that you wanna tell. Maybe so I wouldn't judge any particular movie, but if you maybe see like the director did the same thing 10 times, maybe there's something there. So to me, my film can function, just to answer the concrete question, can probably function, would be a different story, of course. Second genre, I have an interesting, because it's a trilogy that I'm doing. The first film is very subjective. It's about a man. The second movie, which I'm editing right now, it's composed of two halves. One, it's about a woman, and one's about a man. And the third movie is all about the woman. It's the way I constructed the trilogy, but just in terms of how do I tell this, the same word in three movies, not in terms of being equal or providing equality. So I do think that there are so many factors at play, but you choose to do the story, you know, justice, and maybe the questions that you're after, try to make the movie so you do them justice. It will be a different story. Any movie you can change the sex from one to the other, but
or some other.
Or, yeah, or you can change the location. By the way, you can change the, could be in a different country. You can ask just that valid question. How about my movie was not in Romania, was in, Midwest US, or for example, but you have to touch on that universal thing. Mark was about to say earlier, right? Your story has a universal underlayer as well. Of course, it talks about a particular place, a particular war, but at the end of the day, we're talking about human nature, and your movie, if you choose another country, another conflict, could touch on the same basic human nature ideas that you're trying to explore.
Yeah. Any thoughts from you, Marco or Alím?
I have to say that it depends on the definition of the leading character. I mean, I have basically a female leading character because the girlfriend of Adonis is for me a leading character. So I specifically chose women and also worked together with women as members of the team to create this film. But when it comes to the protagonist, so Adonis in this case, I would say it would not work because it has to do with the epoch and also with certain patriarchal stereotypes. So I have to agree with Bogdan somehow, because he says you could change the country and probably the setting and adjust it somehow. But for this specific film, I would say that I needed a male character as a protagonist, but still there is also a woman leading character who has a very interesting story. So I think this works together very well. Yeah, you can make, well, it's not a compromise. You can just adjust these female and male characters. Yeah.
I agree with you. Like every film cannot be, by the way. But the thing is that mostly what I get, or my friends, when they are making movies with women's director, female directors, sometimes they have just critics like, this woman cannot do that. Yeah. And at the end of the story, we even don't have the right to writing like that, like our dream. This is the mostly conservative mind, but we are bringing new stories, so that's why we can say, okay, this is a woman like that, but it is not the same for male characters, of course, you know. So this is the thing, like my girl cannot dance on the nights because la la la. Yeah, they should be, I mean, something, you know. This is the difference about men and women characters, but of course you cannot write everything like that. But in my case and my examples, sometimes there's a lot of people just saying this woman is not gonna do that, or why not? Maybe this is the beginning. I mean, they have to, you know.
Yeah.
It wouldn't. It would. The answer is simply no. With this film, the story is about motherhood in many ways, and it would just be a completely different story. But I do think it's as a question to ask yourself, if you are starting to write a story, is to interrogate: could this character be a female? Could this character be why is this character a female? Why is this character a male? Because we do live in a society where we have different constraints on us, we have different expectations on us, and those expectations or those experiences shape our decisions, shape our psychology, shape everything, obviously. So I think if you're writing, if you're starting to write a story, I think it's a very good question to ask yourself: what happens if this character was a female in this scenario? Why, you know, I think it's a good question to maybe ask yourself if you're starting a piece of work. But for my film, it's not really applicable. No, it's not possible.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what if, right, Alím? So you always, when you do something, when you write something, when you edit something, you always ask yourself why and what if. What if I do this? What if I? That's how you explore. That's why. So, but I agree with Alím. His movie would be a different movie, actually, right? That's why it depends. Again, what do you want to say? What are you after?
Well, thank you so much for being here today and joining us. It was such a lovely discussion, and it was so lovely seeing everyone's face.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want to say a couple of last words to the people watching before we close, or not.
Thank you for watching us. We're not feeling alone.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, and it was very nice to meet you also online here, and I would like to meet you also in person when we will have a chance, maybe next year. You all did some amazing films, and it was a pleasure to talk to you and be with you today for 1.5 hours.
I share that with Marco too. And thank you, Elena, for organizing this and for bringing us all together. I think one of the things that us filmmakers really miss during this whole experience is the physical connection. The physical connection to be with an audience, to see film, but also to interact and kind of come together. And I think that even though there's a pandemic, I think that we're all finding new ways to kind of connect. And so thank you for organizing this. And for me, thank you, you know, for programming our film. It means a lot. And I really hope that I can make it out next year to meet you physically, and hopefully you guys too. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Elena.
So we're finished here. Thank you again so much. For those of you watching us on YouTube, do come in tomorrow again at 5 for the second Directors Corner meeting. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. It was a pleasure.